Looks like we're live. Welcome back to another episode of Marketing is Bullshit
It is.
with Brad Slows. Have I pronounced your last name right?
Close. It's Zales, just like Gonzalez without a G-O-N.
Just like Gonzalez and Roses.
You got it. There you go.
We've known each other for so long, and it's one of those weird things that guys do, right? Where, like in the gym, you never get a guy's first name, but you know each other. And it's like, oh, hey, man. And you'll see each other out in public with your wives, and you got to introduce each
other. This is the guy who bench presses 300. I lived in New York for 35 years, and I remember taking the exact same train every day for 5 years, seeing the exact same people. Yeah. And one day we got stuck, and there's like 300-400 people on the platform waiting, and we're all commiserating, and that's when we introduce each other. It took 5 years.
That's how we are as guys.
I know.
We don't care about that shit, man. We just want to know who's the vanguard when the saber-toothed tiger comes. That's what matters here.
You got it.
Ladies and gentlemen, introducing my friend and colleague, Brad Zolas.
There you go.
Let me just tell you guys a little bit about the stuff that he's done. I'm going to borrow some of this from the obvious things in his office, which is you wrote a smash hit, Liquid Leadership. That's it's been a very impactful book for you, as well as, of course, for other people. You are a very accomplished public speaker. You do leadership training. You're also a jiu-jitsu black belt. I can't read. Yeah,
yes, sir.
So you've got the black belt in jiu-jitsu. Mm-hmm. We met because we both have off-center views on, especially.
That's a kind way of putting it. Yeah,
it is. It's such a strange space and world that we operate in, you and I. It is such a bizarre thing. That's what led to me wanting to do this show in the first place. So before we went live, you were also telling me about this host of other things that you've done, sort of generally in the world of marketing, branding, advertising.
Yeah.
I want to start because I'm so fascinated by brands, not brands, but the whole psychology that allows human beings to create a thing called a brand, and for that thing to work is just endlessly intriguing to me, right? Yeah. And yet, at the same time, you and I both know that most of the people who, at least in the online space, who are gravitate towards this work are people we wouldn't want to have a lunch with, people we would cross the street to avoid. Let's just start here. What do you think it is about this space that makes it such an easy, like low-hanging fruit for those kind of people?
Well, this is the funniest part. I'm just going to throw it out there. It's easier than going into science,
right. Yeah.
And the reason I bring that up is I've had a lot of people on my podcast, Awakened Nation, women especially, who talk about the STEM, path in college and everything. Mm-hmm. And then they make this hard left turn. All of a sudden, they're like the best biochemists that college has ever seen. And all of a sudden they make this hard left turn, change majors, and become a marketing person. And back in the day when the internet was first exploding, I had a little design firm called K2. And I distinctly remember this. And Manny, you might remember this too. But when you would have a meeting with a client, the marketing people were on one side, and it was almost always 99% women. And on the left-hand side of the table were all the IT guys, and they were usually guys in puffy sweaters and a little unkept, and they were the guys who ran the servers, and they were fighting all the time. Between marketing was trying to say, we're content. We are the internet. We represent the front line of the company. Yeah. And the IT guys were fighting like crazy, going, no, we're the internet. You wouldn't exist without us.
Right,
and you could literally see the disdain on their faces. And we would come in as a design firm, that specialized in building websites. And we would just stand there going, oh my God, it's like an Italian and Polish wedding.
Right.
It was horrible. And so I come from that background, and not only the digital space, but in 1984, accidentally landed in doing these big meetings for corporations like, pharmaceutical companies like Merck. Back then they were Merck, Sharp, and Dome, and also doing Lincoln, Mercury, Ford, Mercedes-Benz, and BMW. So half the year I'm doing pharmaceuticals, the other half during the summer I'm doing, Lincoln and Ford.
Yeah.
And back then we were doing slides. So this was all B2B, salesperson to salesperson, the corporate thing. So, you have to create marketing at these different levels along with content that they can use when they go out into the sales pitch world.
Yeah.
So I've had a crazy career. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, for sure. And wide and varied as well. I like the example of the marketers and the IT guys. It harkens back to the movie Office Space for me.
It does. Hey, I'd like you to come in on Saturday. Yeah. Where's my stapler? Yeah.
So if you could just go ahead and come on in on Sunday too, yeah, that'd be great.
Nah, not gonna do that. That movie was saying everything we wanted to say. For those of you who work in a cubicle, God bless you.
It was uncanny how accurate that movie was. Everything about it, like Mike Judge, shout out, man. If this ever crosses your ears, I saw his interview with Joe Rogan, and on an interview, he is the least funny human being I've ever heard. And yet he's created some of the most enduring, spot on comedy ever.
Yeah.
So it's really
from Futurama to you name it.
Well, have you seen Silicon Valley?
No, I haven't seen that yet.
Okay. That's the one you have to watch. The one you have to watch. So anyway, but like when I watched Office Space the first time, it was so accurate that I thought it was filmed in the town I grew up in.
Oh my God.
I was like, oh my God, everything about this is, so I originally asked you about this space that we operate in and why such weird people are gravitate toward it. And I think you're right that it's easy.
Yeah.
I also wonder, do you think is it just me, or is there a preponderance of predatory type thinking in this? Whatever the overlap between marketing and coaching, and that kind of stuff is, what's your take on that, man?
Well, if you go back as little as 25 years, when you became an agency, now you could charge a premium. And that premium usually meant you had employees, you had an office with desks and chairs and all this other stuff. Right. So you could justify your fees.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're completely online.
Yeah.
And in a lot of ways, people are scrambling like crazy to make that next dollar. And everybody, I don't know if you know the statistic, but I think the Bureau of Labor and Statistics, they said on average 4.4 million businesses are started every year in the United States. But that shifted in 2021. I think it was 42 million people voluntarily left their jobs in 2021, and 39% of those people left to start their own business. And that means that's like 16 million. So you see this huge ramp up that says, hey, I want to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
So I think being an entrepreneur, the first thing people think about, I've been an entrepreneur since 1979. And a lot of people think of it as, well, it's going to be an adventure and it's going to be exciting, like they're going to be Captain Jack Sparrow, on the deck of their pirate ship. Right. And I think marketing is really that sexy part of being an entrepreneur that they want to get into because it appears easy. Yeah. Look at the tools that have come along in the past, 5 years, like Canva. That has really taken a dent out of my business as far as logo design, because now people are sitting there going, oh, I can get a logo for $50 from some guy on Fiverr. And it's like, well, there's a much deeper dive into creating a logo that becomes a brand, so you're missing it all. So to make a long story short, I think it's the sexiness of marketing, But because we're no longer under the traditional analog kind of world, people are scrambling constantly to get that payment, do the job, and then find the next payment, because it's literally a one-off business, which means as soon as you're done with one, you got to start the next. That's why we're getting this predatory group of people who, and even in the coaching space, high yield, or high profit coaching or whatever. They're doing so because they don't have the model down. We know membership works, especially like our buddy Tony Watley. He's got that figured out, and built that over years, 7-8 years. It takes time, but I think it's the sexiness of marketing that gravitates new entrepreneurs to the space.
Yeah, I think you're right, and you said something about how people think that entrepreneurship is sexy, and it takes me back to the E-Myth stuff and Michael Gerber.
Oh yeah.
Man, he really nailed it. He said culturally we turn entrepreneurs into rock stars, and I think that that's true. And so for anybody listening who you might be thinking to yourself, now the odds are, if you're listening to this podcast, you're already up to your chode in marketing, and like you're in, because this is an industry kind of a show, but I do want it to have a more mass appeal. So let's assume that you find this sometime and you're thinking about becoming a marketer. I wanted to clarify the kind of excitement and sexiness that it is. And so I would characterize it as the excitement and sexiness that is akin to sudden onset, uncontrollable, explosive diarrhea in the middle of the day. So if that appeals to you, or like maybe you're on a first date or something, if that appeals to you, I say definitely become an entrepreneur.
No, I look at it like Ernest Hemingway. Hemingway was asked to write. He became a writer on a dare. He wasn't a writer, and he uses like a 7 and 9 sentence structure for each paragraph.
Yeah.
Well, he was a lonely man who went out on adventures, to get attention and learn and write books about it. And then he killed himself. So I want you to understand that entrepreneurship, especially if you're a graphic designer like me, is a lot of sitting alone in a room with, and I have 2 30-inch monitors and 2 laptops designing. And if you're a person who doesn't like being alone, this is not the profession for you, because I've started 10 businesses in my life, and some have done well, some have done okay, a few failed. I mean, I made money with all of them. And my 4th company, I took public on NASDAQ, and we raised millions of dollars. So it is like gambling. I hate to say it.
No, I think that's spot on.
Yeah,
you really, so it's fascinating to me. The more I stay in this space, and the more I work in this space, and the more I contemplate this stuff, it's, if the job of building yourself into a situation where you're far too busy for it to be possibly managed by you, and then figuring out how to outsource and optimize and automate so that you buy time again, knowing that the next step is to get right back to that place where you're way too busy again.
Yeah.
Then heck, come on in, the water's fine.
It's hilarious. I see people. This is the funniest part. We've consulted, my girl and I, we've both consulted with companies where the person worked in government for most of their life. And then one day they go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. And they go out and they get all these loans, and they're bankrupt within 2 years. And the reason is when you work in certain professions, money is magic. It just drops out of nowhere. So when you're working in a government agency, and not to knock anybody who works in the government, I'm just saying you may not work in profit and loss accounting. Money just shows up because you just raise taxes. It doesn't happen that way when you're doing the private sector, and you're working in the capitalistic model of first I got to create a minimum viable product to sell, and sell the hell out of it. And that's rough. I see that a lot of times, Manny. people go, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Well, you better get a damned coach, because you've been in a corporate business your whole life. Maybe you even were at the C-suite.
Yep.
That doesn't make you somebody who should be running a business. I hate to say it.
No, you're right. In fact, I think maybe the only thing that really sort of is an accurate indicator of whether someone should be running a business or not is if they do it and make it work. It's funny, man. It's so hard. And it's hard in ways, and this is the takeaway here. Here's the nugget. It's hard in ways that you couldn't possibly have predicted while looking through the store window.
Oh, yeah.
That's the thing. I came from construction to this, and painting houses is physically immensely harder than this. You can't even compare the two things.
Yeah.
But I also just learned recently that on average, an engaged person leading a Zoom meeting burns 350 calories, And so it's like, how does that even reconcile?
So I can eat cake is what you're saying.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is you can eat cake, right? But you can't afford it.
Yeah, there you go. That's why certain levels of Zoom are free.
Right. So you just talked a little bit about logos. And for me, I love, like I said, the psychology underneath all of this stuff, the branding and the logos.
Sure.
What do people miss okay, you've had this, I know, because we all have. You're talking to a prospect and maybe they're going to become a client, and they say something to the effect of, as soon as I get my logo and my website together, I'm going to call you. Right.
Yeah.
You know that one. What do those folks not understand about a website and a logo?
I'll actually start with an actual story that took place.
Yeah.
This guy came to us, Jason, and he was recommended by a friend, and he wanted to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And he had spent most of his professional career working in specialty products. Mm-hmm. And that is like, when a company calls up and says they're going to do a golf outing, they want their logo put on every single jacket, it's specialty products. And so he did everything from pens to caps to jackets, golf bags, you name it, for corporations. So he comes to us, and my business partner at the time, Richard Carey, and I, we sat very comfortably in the room, and Jason starts to pitch his idea. And he goes, I want to call it Amazon Promotional Products. Okay. And this is a while ago. So I stood up and I said, we're done. And he was shocked. And I knew him through a friend, so he already knew I had a good sense of humor. I said, we're done. Thank you. I want to thank you for coming. I reached out to shake his head. And he goes, what? I mean, he was totally shocked. I said, I don't want to be a part of a lawsuit.
Right.
He goes, what do you mean? He goes, I already registered it and everything. I said, well, you're an idiot. I told him right to his face, and we had a good laugh, I didn't call him an idiot, but I was just like, that is probably, shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
He goes, why? I said, because Amazon is growing into all different areas. He goes, they're about books. I said, no, they're not. I said, they're bigger. They're growing much bigger. And so he was like, oh, okay. And then, so we sat down. I said, look, I'll help you rename it. We'll name the company. Well, Richard and I will do the back end, build the e-commerce site, and create this logo. Mm-hmm. And I think we charged, I forget what it was, but back then you could charge between $8,000 and $25,000 for a logo. And somebody is, who's listening right now is like, what? That's crazy. Well, here's what it is. I have to do a long-term assessment of his competition.
Right.
I have to look at the colors that his competition is using. I have to come up with a tagline that basically just knocks it out of the park.
Yeah.
The logo has to set itself apart, and we had to build the website and do all the promotional brochures and things like that. And back then, we were transitioning from analog into digital at that time. Mm-hmm. So we had to do everything from scratch, man.
Yeah.
So what eventually happened is we named the company ePromos, your promotional products superstore. And that just established them right away as this high niche. Yep. And that first 2 years, they were still doing phone calls. The website wasn't getting, some of the traction, but they would call up somebody and go, you can order everything on the website, blah, blah, blah. And he built that into a multi-million-dollar business. But it's a little bit of naivete is what people walk in with,
Yeah.
Okay. And I like to use Starbucks as an example. Whether
Right.
you like Starbucks or you don't, Starbucks, when you walk in the door, what is a brand? People a lot of times, it's a logo. It's the logo on the cup.
Right.
No, it's the experience that people get. And the visual backup of that is the logo.
Yeah.
So everybody, when I tell you what it's like to walk into a Starbucks, 90% of the people listening are going, yeah, I know exactly what that's like. That beautiful Italian tile. I walk in. But what they don't notice are the little details. At eye level, in that glass case is everything that has to do with coffee, donuts, sandwiches, things you can dunk into your coffee. That's all at eye level. Everything below that is their premium products that get you in the door in the afternoon for lunch and for dinner. When you and I were growing up, coffee was morning. You didn't drink it any other time unless you went out for a nice Italian dinner. Then you have a little cappuccino at the end.
Yeah.
That was it. But now, in order to keep people in the door, we're drinking coffee all day long now. And so it is the Italian coffee experience. Yeah. And so anybody listening right now, I want you to understand, you're not just creating this beautiful design logo. What you're creating is a moment in time where people go, I really like doing business with this guy. And there's your logo. And that keeps repeating over and over again. Your color choices, everything. It's all part of the full package, so that when somebody sees your logo on the side of a van, let's say you detail cars, really high-end stuff. When they see your logo going down the street, they go, hey, that guy did my car. He did my Porsche. That's what a brand is. It's the customer experience with you. And your logo just happens to be that backup stamp that says they make quality stuff.
Right. Love it. Love it. So really your logo is just sort of a random image until there's an emotional thing to connect it to, right?
Exactly.
Do I have that right? Yeah.
Yes. I did Simply Eartha's brand, and that was Eartha Kitt. Her daughter came to me. Mom had been dead for a few years, and she was trying to wrangle her brand back, because a bunch of lawyers in Hollywood controlled Eartha Kitt, believe it or not. So we got it back from her. I brought in a team, and we started to do market analysis and figured it out. And we came up with the Simply Eartha brand, which has a little squiggly in it because her mom liked to doodle. And so you will see that in a lot of shops and places that sell her jewelry and some of her products. And it reflects everything you may know or not know about Eartha Kitt, which was she was all about nature, organic products, things that weren't flashy but simple. And that brand represents the entire product line of everything she has, from pillows and things in the furnitures to bracelets and jewelry. And when you think about branding, you have to think about that. What is the tone of voice of your brand? Right. What adjective would you use to describe what you do? Are you silly and fun? We all know, nobody beats the Wiz or Crazy Eddie's. If I said those two names, anybody who's a boomer knows exactly what I'm talking about. Those are wild, crazy brands, flashy, just to get a sale. But then there's more sophisticated brands that you look at. Starbucks is very sophisticated. It's very Italian, very high level. So sorry, I'm chatting away here.
No, that's the idea, man. I don't know what the level of misconception is like in the broader world, but I know in our space, it's almost like a tragic comedy how little people understand about this stuff.
Right.
And yet every time you show up online, every time you post on your socials, you are building your personal brand, whether you're aware of it or not. And so the thing that is, I think, so important to take away from this is, what do you do? What do people think, say, and feel about you? And now I'm shifting to personal brands, right? But it applies to Starbucks too, right? The reason the Starbucks logo is effective is not because the logo itself is so great. It's in and of itself. Yeah. In and of itself, the logo is whatever, right? It's nothing memorable, but Starbucks had the insight to say, no matter where you go in the world, if you go into a Starbucks, you get the same experience.
Exactly.
And so that reinforces an emotional kind of continuity, which is then represented by the brand or the logo. Yeah.
I want everybody to go Google this or do a search, whatever platform you're using. Tom Peters, one of the top, business consultants to come out of McKinley, he wrote an article for Fast Company magazine back in 1997. And that article is called A Brand Called You, Y-O-U, a brand called You. And they used a Tide sort of looking logo in the background, and it said A Brand Called You. And what he was trying to say is, he said, in the future, every person will be a brand.
Yep.
And so it's all the brand, styles or guides or whatever you've studied through the years, it transitions beautifully to people.
Yeah, it really does.
And I want to say a little something about this right up front. A lot of you went to Gary Vaynerchuk, seminars, and you came back swearing.
Right.
And stop it. Here, I'm just going to stop. Bad, business owner. And you lost clients. And the reason you lost clients is you're not Gary V, okay? Right. You can't be, swearing all the time if that's not your brand. And I think too many people go, well, I want to look like this, and I want to be like this, and they create a facade that's not real. Yeah. I am exactly the person you see on stage in a keynote, as you see online, as you see here. I'm snarky as hell. I'm a smartass, and I'm a contrarian. But I'm also kind, and I like to do a deep dive. I like conversation. I mean, this is who I am. And I want everybody to write a list of who are you? Yep. And if you're not somebody who's comfortable swearing, don't swear.
Don't swear. Right.
Before we started, Manny's in the green room, and I love to tease him. We've known each other for so long, but he has his sweat shirt on. He has his hoodie sweatshirt on, and he looks exactly like all his promotional photos from the past few years. And I'm like, that's his style. And then he has hair gel, just perfect, ready to go. Boom. And so that's him. That's his style.
Well, it's interesting.
I wear a lot of black.
It's interesting that you bring up this thing, because I can't tell you how many people have, with good intentions, hey, you should, you're so good on camera and you're so personable, you should wear a sport jacket all the time, or you should do this and that. And I actually tried various things for a little while. It's like, you know what though? Let's say like we meet at an event or something. There's 0% chance I'm going to be wearing dress pants and a sport coat, even if I'm speaking on stage now. Now, back in the beginning, I would be like, oh, I better dress for this. And now I don't care, simply because I want to be comfortable and I want to be honest,
Yeah, be yourself.
Yeah.
I used to go to this meeting, monthly meeting. It was a networking event on Long Island. Mm-hmm. Bruce Lipman put it together. And it was all accountants and lawyers, and they were all in 3-piece suits, and I mean, we're talking $2,000 and $3,000 suits years ago. Mm-hmm. And I would show up in the same uniform all the time. Never wore a tie. I had a wine-colored dress shirt on with a big collar. I had a Hugo Boss sport, coat, and with a handkerchief in the pocket. And then I had on dark jeans. Men, by the way, if you're going to wear jeans, always dark jeans with Bostonian, loafers. That's all I did. Yeah. I didn't think anything about it. A woman stood up in the middle of the meeting and just turned around and looked at me and she said, Brad is dressed impeccable today. And all the guys in the room were like, what in the hell does that guy have that I don't? I was embarrassed. And I didn't really think, why, she did that until years later. I kind of sat down and analyzed it. And I realized I stood out from this sea of sameness. Bingo. That's what it was. So when you're creating a brand, even your own personal way of dressing.
Yeah.
I had Sheila Anderson on my show. She will tell you outright how to dress. Hire people like that if you're a dope, or you don't have a wife, or you have a bad sense of color. Please hire somebody, because it's worth its weight. she has probably gotten hundreds of clients just by the way she dresses.
Yeah.
And men should really take advantage of this. Manny, you always have impeccable hair. I hate to sound like, you're a hairdresser, but that's one of your trademarks. Mine as well. Yeah. One of my trademarks as well. I don't grow a beard because I can't. I'm Irish. Right. I get this. This is weeks. This is months right here. I have the Shaggy from Scooby-Doo, kind of look.
Like Zoink Scoob.
Zoinks. And so I, and you and I, we imitate sometimes, we do fun stuff on the show. So if that's your persona, don't you think your logo should be maybe a little lighter, not so serious? That's
right.
My number one pet peeve is when I see a logo and somebody goes, look at my logo. And I'm like, well, why did they use those colors? Why is that shape? Why? I keep asking why.
Yeah.
And they can't answer it. And it just doesn't make sense if you're doing a logo for, let's say you're detailing cars and you got a cartoon as a logo. It's like, what, and you want to work on Porsches. Okay, there's a disconnect.
Yeah.
And I'm going to throw this out. I want us to talk about this, but we now have professional tools like Canva in the hands of amateurs. And a lot of times I see a book cover, a logo, something that's templatized from those platforms, and I cringe. And the person's super proud of what they created, but it doesn't fit their marketing analysis of what they are creating. So there's a huge disconnect design-wise with the purpose.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because that's what I see the most of.
Well, I think that this may in and of itself be a heuristic, but I think that one of the things that sort of plagues people when they're trying to come up with what positions them and their brand and their values and all that is that they don't appreciate or understand how heuristics work.
Right.
We are constantly bombarded with way too much information. And thank God we have these sort of, not biases, but this ability to dramatically chunk things down into simple representations.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, this is maybe going down a weird little garden path, but one thing I'm personally, the thing that enamors me the most is simplicity that took a tremendous amount of effort to get to.
Yeah.
And so, I love Volvos.
Yes.
And a lot of my friends tease me about that because maybe they aren't the most performance-driven cars, but mine is actually pretty good. But the point is, the thing that attracted me to my car, and I love saying this story, I went and I looked at BMWs and I looked at Mercedes, although I couldn't even get on the lot with Mercedes. I just find them so ugly now. But Sorry, Mercedes, you guys used to be the kings and now you fell off. But anyway, so Audi, BMW, Cadillac. I looked at a lot of nice cars before I chose mine. And literally, man, they drove mine up. They said, you know what? I got one in the back I want to show you. I'm like, okay. So I'm standing in the front and they drove it up. And as the guy pulled it up, I was like, done. I'm in. At this point, because of the way it looks, you have to now ruin it for me. Otherwise, I'm buying this car.
It's true.
But the thing of it was what I like about the design is it's reducing. It's constantly taking away and being simpler and simpler and cleaner and cleaner.
Yes.
Normally with people, I use the sushi analogy. Right. It doesn't make sense on the surface that rice and raw fish should be the closest thing to heaven we ever get to. And yet when it's done right, nothing else comes close. And so here's this thing where a whole culture has spent hundreds of years massively refining this process to this just impossibly elegant simplicity. That's what I love.
Yeah.
And that is what a good logo is, right? It's
100%.
It's this way that you can look at one single image and know all of this information.
Well, I'll give you a good example. Federal Express used to be called Federal Express, and they used to say we're Federal Express. Well, they listened to their customers. No one called them Federal Express.
Yeah, that's right.
They called them FedEx.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to FedEx this out. Smart marketers listened and changed the logo to FedEx.
Yeah.
Now, what a lot of people don't realize is if you look at the FedEx logo, it's that orange and blue, and they're like, nice logo, but they missed the arrow.
Yeah,
in the negative space.
The arrow. Right.
There's an arrow that moves you forward.
Yeah.
Do you know how long that probably took that designer to come up with that? Probably a month of just doing sketch after sketch of what can I do with an F? What can I do with an E?
Yeah.
Hundreds of drawings like that.
Yeah.
But let's get back to Volvo. You know what's funny? Volvo had such a solid reputation for so many years as being the car that was in the least amount of accidents.
It's a safety car. Yeah.
Safe and reliable.
That's
now,
right.
I disagree with that. I think it's because it gravitated toward it attracted accountants and people who drove very simple. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then something happened in the 90s, I think it was. They started to give it a sexier flair. They started to, especially the rear end, it started to have this dip and then a roundness to it. It still looked like a Volvo. And if you notice, good logo design, they don't change it too much.
Right.
The Volvo logo is pretty much the same as it was probably 100 years ago, just a little tighter, maybe more modern typeface, but simple. If you ever get a booklet from Volvo, Porsche, Mercedes, there's no clutter in those booklets. It's simple, clean design. And a lot of people don't realize that sophisticated, clean design uses very upper echelon typefaces, simple dynamics. It's using, you may not know this, but it's using the Swiss grid pattern of layout, putting everything in a way that your eye is captured all along it. And a lot of people who don't, haven't been trained in design, they look at some things and they go, oh, that's too simple, or it's too much white space. Let's put stuff in there.
Yeah.
Or make the logo bigger. Design it's not just an art, but it's a science.
Yeah.
And I personally like to use typeface as a design element. And I like to keep things very, very simple. And the first thing we learn when I went to college for graphic design and illustration is we study the Bauhaus rules. And one of the rules of the Bauhaus, and this is a bunch of German designers, architects, illustrators all got together in Germany in the 20s and 30s and came up with a bunch of rules that they would all live by. And so one of their top rules was form follows function.
Right.
And so nothing is wasted, simple. And I transformed that through my 40 plus career into one idea at a time. Okay, one idea at a time, because you don't want to confuse your customer. You don't want to confuse a new buyer of your product.
Yeah.
You don't want to throw the kitchen sink at them because they're going to go, whoa, that's too much. One idea at a time. Form follows function. Keep it simple.
Yes.
And if you notice at Volvo, the simple lines on it.
Yeah.
Some of your headshots and your photos, it's in a new Volvo. Am I correct?
You are correct, sir.
And you're wearing a sweatshirt, a tracksuit.
Yeah.
And you're getting out of this beautiful, European car. That's an image, a brand image that's incredibly powerful for Manny, because it says right away, this guy is so comfortable and so rich. He can just go around in a tracksuit.
That's right.
and you look like a tough guy who runs a series of boxing gyms across Europe. Yeah. I thought about this before we got on. But you want to have that kind of confidence. I like to dress a little bit like a rock star sometimes. I have my collar up on my sport coat. I wear necklaces and I have, watches and stuff. And I like to be photographed out in the desert because it's a beautiful juxtaposition against I'm dressed to the nines and I'm in 110-degree heat out in the middle of nowhere and the wind's blowing. And so whatever image you're going to create, have the chutzpah, as they say, to just grab it by the rings and go for it. Don't ever just get a headshot, with your fist under your chin. Go, okay, I'm an author. Right. Do something that sets you apart.
Yeah, absolutely.
Living in Las Vegas as I do, there's plenty of places to get photographed. Take advantage of that, man, because we are in the day and age of the personal brand. And I love Manny's image. It's killer. But we have a couple of friends that I think everybody should go look at. First is obviously Tony Watley.
Mm-hmm.
Tony had a passion for cars. As a matter of fact, one of his first side hustle businesses that made him a millionaire specialized in high-end, I believe it was auto parts, like hubs and caps.
Yeah.
And, things that can, bedazzle your car,
yeah,
for lack of a better word. So his logo is a gear, it says 365 driven. And he picked his colors. He has everything set. And that's how you create a brand. And every time you see Tony, he usually has a cap on that says, 365 driven. Or if he's not wearing a cap, he has, a jacket on that has the logo on it as well. So his followers and people who are engaged and pay him as a coach, this image is just big and powerful and growing. And I think he's a great example of a personal brand that built slowly over time and is crushing it.
Yeah, totally. Shout out to Tony. And even on his non-automotive related stuff, he still uses the gear.
Yeah.
Like he's made it his own completely. So we talked a little bit about branding and about the space and everything. I'm just curious. Let's see. Oh yeah. This is actually, we're getting close to time. So
sure.
let's give them your philosophy on how to kind of maintain success in this industry without losing, let's say, your soul.
Oh man.
Without losing what can only be described as your soul.
Quit chasing money. Chase projects, big projects, things that, I have a client who came to me a few years ago, and I knew the person that was doing her design work, and I never badmouth people, but this person was so nasty to the staff and everybody that my friend came to me and begged me to take over the production of her magazine. And I said no at first, because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
And then she asked me again. And by the third time, I sat down and I said, look, if we're going to do this, I have a high fee because I've been doing this for a long time, and you're not going to see any mistakes. When you go to the printer, unless it's a typo that the editor missed, it all prints beautifully. Mm-hmm. And so I said, you need to turn this into a business, and here's how. So I don't just offer design and creative services. I show my clients how they can profit from this, make it a lead generator, build on that. Because at the end of the day, you don't want to just have a one-off business. Every time you do a project, you got to look for the next project.
Yeah. So
delegation is going to be important. Running around looking for every little, tiny dollar is going to, it's going to kill you. You don't want to be doing $50 logos.
Right.
Especially when you're my age. I'm in my 60s. Why in hell am I going to do a logo for $50? So you have to really take a look at your minimum viable product. Is it making you enough money that you can relax a little bit? Are you trying to be the lowest, priced service in the schoolyard? You don't want to be that. You want to be that kind of brand that attracts higher end brands. If Porsche came to me today to design one of their booklets for one of their cars, I am easily prepared to do that. I'm quite capable of doing that, but I'm not charging them $5,000 for it either. I'm charging a premium because it's Porsche. Mm-hmm. And so I think always remember this, and I'm going to swear and I'm going to be a little funny on the show, but it's like when somebody tries to cut your price, do what Rob Anspach does, basically tell them off. Yeah. But I tell Rob, you got to say this: I'm a grown-ass man with a mortgage.
That's right. I can't I can't wait to hear how Rob, how that goes in Rob's words, because it's going to be a lot more in your face than that.
If you don't know who Rob Anspach is, ladies and gentlemen, he's a good friend of ours, and he owns Anspach Media, and he's well known for being sarcastic.
Yeah.
And he was receiving all these phone calls from scammers, and he thought, what should I do with this? And he decided to turn it into a series of books, and they just grew on their own. And he probably makes thousands a month from book sales because they're so damn funny.
Yeah.
And he always sends me one to review so I can put my stamp on it. And I'm like, I'm just going to read 3 chapters. And before I know it, I'm on page 78. And I'm like, damn you, Rob. You did it again. I'm laughing out loud. But Rob is a very good example of personal branding.
Yeah.
He doesn't give a shit what you think. Sorry for swearing on your show, but he does not care. But here's what I get from Rob. I am learning business advice at this age from him because he literally has told people, and we've tried to pitch business together. And when people don't get it and they turn him down, he doubles his price if they ever come back to him. It's like, well, you're going to suffer for that.
Yeah.
And he also says, never lower your price to fit their budget. They have to raise money to fit your expertise. And I'm just like, that what he just said.
Yeah. Well, so depending on when you're hearing this, Rob will be on the show or has been on the show already, and you can go find the Rob Anspach episode.
Yeah.
And I haven't even filmed it yet, but we have it booked. But I promise you, it's going to be fantastic. So no matter when you're hearing this, I can tell you with confidence that the episode with Rob is going to be great.
Here's the funniest part. You two guys, believe it or not, on Spotify and Apple are in my top 10.
Oh, I love that.
Next to like Dog the Bounty Hunter. I'm like, how the hell do these two get in the top 10? Yours was the Tao of the Unbreakable Man.
Yeah.
And then Rob's first appearance was just Mr. Sarcasm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, how did you guys get in the top 10? What magic mojo did you do? So.
We still don't know. What I can say is you pulled a great conversation out of me both times.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So listen, man, I genuinely appreciate you, my friend. Sure. I really do. I know that's not a surprise to you or anything, but I'll say it in front of the whole school and I don't care who hears.
Thank this guy in the track suit. I love this guy.
That's right. What, are you kidding me? I love this guy.
This guy.
Forget about it.
I thank you, Manny. Thank you so much. Your conversation was just jaw-dropping. The background you grew up in, and it trained you for marketing. Actually,
it really did. And it's so weird because I didn't really understand how unusual my life was until I came into this space and started talking about it and realizing most people are like, what?
What? Wait, what?
Yeah. So, it was awesome being on your show. It was awesome having you on my show. Finally, that's fantastic. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to mess your last name up.
Zolas.
Brad Zolas.
Well, honestly, it took my teachers from kindergarten all the way up to right around junior high before they started pronouncing my name right. So don't feel bad.
Yeah. Anyway, man, I'll see you guys on the next one. And Brad, thank you so much, bud.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
All right. Bye, guys.